term woke constantly comes up in conversation. National media have used woke to describe everything from progressive policy to civil rights to pronoun use to simply telling the truth about history. Just this week alone, the term woke consumed headlines, from articles in the New York Times like "Why Wokeness Will Fail" to the Daily Beast headline reading "AOC's woke whine is why the Democrats can't stop losing." This unidentified term woke is now being used to explain the Democratic loss in Virginia and raise alarm bells about the midterm elections. Well, joining us now to get beyond the headlines is Reverend Mark Thompson. He's host of Make It Plain. Mark, you often use the hashtag and the phrase "get woke" when you were hosting morning radio. You had me participate in that as well. It meant something meaningful a few years ago. What was the meaning, and what's been taken away from that word?
Well, first of all, Nayyera, thank you for having me. Much love to you and the family and the kids especially. It started out really meaning just what it implies: people awakening, people being aware of the things that affect them and affect our people, especially at this time. But just like everything else, the right wing, particularly right wing media and mainstream media that leans right wing, takes terms that are popular to those of us in the civil rights community or the activist community, and vulgarizes them and overuses them and mocks them. So it's just like critical race theory. That's a bad word now. That's a bad thing. An intellectual professor, Derek Bell, coined that term, and now they've turned that into a bad word. What did they do during the Obama early campaign in 2008? They vulgarized and made profane the black liberation theology of the Reverend Dr. James Cone. So this is what they do. And I think the problem is, again, there's a tendency in mainstream media to take its cue from what Fox News and the right wing does. Thankfully, BNC doesn't do that. I'll give you an example. Just a few minutes ago, I was asked to do an interview in London on the Times of London radio. It hasn't gotten much pickup, but Joe Biden mentioned Satchel Paige today. And he said in these words, he was a great Negro, a pitcher in the great Negro leagues. Now, those of us over here know Joe Biden has a stutter. He meant to say league the first time. Right-wing Twitter is aflame now because they think Joe Biden still uses the term Negro. Clearly he doesn't. He referred to the Negro leagues. We haven't stopped referring to the Negro leagues in that way. It's not a bad word, but you would have thought he actually said the N word. But this is what they do. They blow things out of proportion. This is what they've done with woke. They've made it a dirty word, and frankly, it's not a dirty word. But listen, the challenge for all of us is to figure out ways to prevent the right wing from taking our terms, our phrases, and literally our language and vulgarizing it.
So you mentioned the word woke. There's also the term cancel culture, which came from the idea of like, oh, you're canceled. That's been turned into a negative when none of the people who complain about cancel culture have actually been deplatformed or canceled.
Right. Again, all of these really are dog whistles. The attacks on critical race culture, the attack on the term woke, complaints about cancel culture when disproportionately the people that are being canceled are all of us who are being canceled by the right wing. Voter suppression is cancel culture. When you filibuster our ability to protect our voting rights, when you filibuster the George Floyd Policing Act, these things are canceling things that would mean human rights and social justice for everyone. So they seize upon these and flip them and play the victim somehow. That's what Rittenhouse is doing in the trial in Wisconsin. That's what Ahmaud Arbery's killers are doing. We're the victims. Woke, the attack on the term woke is code for blackness in many ways, and those who are allied with blackness and human rights and social justice. Woke is code when they attack it. It's code for women's rights. It's code for immigrants' rights. It's code for poor people's and working class rights. So woke is a bad term. So we can't pass Build Back Better because that would be too woke. We can't answer the concerns of the majority of Virginians because that would be too woke. We can't talk about or teach the history, the true history of what really happened here in America. Not critical race theory, because critical race theory isn't taught at the elementary, secondary, high school, or undergraduate level, by the way, breaking news. But we can't talk about that because that's too woke. All of that is code, and it appeals to those who don't know any better. Because you can't really say, as Lee Atwater once said, you can't really call it what it is. You have to come up with another way around it and term it something else.
In the 1 minute we have left together, I get what the right wing is doing, but mainstream media, is it white people who write these headlines, who have these thoughts, not understanding what they're really saying? Like, is that the disconnect? Is the disconnect with what Black culture and cultural literacy really is?
I think it may be even a little bit worse than understanding or not understanding, Nayyera. It is people, we live in a society today that thrives on clickbait. Click, click, click. We need clicks. We need things that are inflammatory. That is the algorithm. And that's hurt us. That's why there's so much disinformation peddled on social media, because it inflames that. The algorithm does not promote, these algorithms on social media do not promote facts, do not promote calmness or civil discourse. They promote dishonesty, disinformation, and fights. And that may be worse than whether people understand it or not. Some clearly don't, some do. But we're driven in this society these days on social media, and how many of us depend on it now, we're driven by clickbait. And that's very, very, very unfortunate. Fox has the highest ratings. And so what some mainstream media do is try to get Fox's ratings by going after their racist audience. Thank God BNC doesn't do that.
Well, you mentioned that it's the algorithm, right? The clickbait. And we know now that those algorithms really depend and are driven by fear, which is what all of these dog whistles are about. Mark, I guess all I can say as I let you go is, in the spirit of Childish Gambino, stay woke. Reverend Mark Thompson, host of Make It Plain, thank you for joining us.
Get Fox's ratings by going after their.
I guess all I can say as I let you go is, in the spirit of Childish Gambino, stay woke. Reverend Mark Thompson, host of Make It Plain, thank you for joining us.